everyone. I'm Ann Davis, the founder of Venture with Impact, and I'm chatting with Brianne Connor, who is an alumna of our 1-month Venture with Impact program in Lisbon this past November. So how are you, Bri?
I'm good, Ann. How are you?
Great, thank you. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Minneapolis.
Okay, great. So Bri works in human resources at Pearson Education in Minneapolis, and she volunteered with APAV this last November. APAV's mission is to support victims of crime, their families, and friends by providing free and confidential quality services, and they contribute to the improvement of public, social, and private policies centered on the statute of the victim. So again, thanks for taking the time to chat with us about your experience with us, Bri.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I think you learned about Venture with Impact through Pearson. I think we did a presentation with them about a year ago. Why did you decide to join us?
Yeah, so I did learn about Venture through my company. Someone else in my company had previously attended a Venture with Impact program. And so Anne had joined us on a social impact call. So that's where I first heard about it. And that really piqued my interest, but I didn't end up going maybe for a year later. But I always kept it in the back of my mind. I currently run the social impact efforts for my company Pearson out of our Bloomington offices, Minneapolis, Minnesota offices. So this was a great program for me to be able to work full time, which I would need to continue doing. And I could do that job remotely, but also really get a social impact part of traveling. So I always love to travel. So this would be an added for growing professionally and personally. So that is what really stuck out to me.
Mm-hmm. Had you worked remotely prior to doing Venture?
Not on a full-time basis like I did when I was in Venture. I have the flexibility to work remotely in my position, but not on a scheduled basis.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about the conversation that you had with your boss or your manager when you told them that you were interested?
Sure. I kind of put together a document that went over what Venture with Impact was, but then also discussed of how it would help me grow professionally and personally. I have always wanted to work globally, and this was a global company, and so I thought that would be great exposure to getting to work with a different sector in another country that's different culture, different communication styles to help me grow professionally. And then my boss knows I love to travel, so this would be a great way for me to incorporate that and travel for a longer time than I can take with my vacation time. And then I can work remotely with this position. So that was kind of a easy help in deciding.
Sure. Yeah. So you said you hadn't worked remotely for this long of a period of time, a full month or longer before. How did you find it, or what was it like for you?
It was great. I was able to do it with ease. It wasn't anything super challenging. I really enjoyed the flexibility. I adjusted my hours in Lisbon, I was working later in the evening to adjust my hours to the offices here in Minneapolis just to be available for the people that I support in my role. But it was great. I really enjoyed doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about Lisbon? Why did you decide to come to Lisbon, and what did you really like about the city?
Lisbon really stuck out to me because I love Europe, and I had never been to Lisbon. And Lisbon was probably one of the best cities I've ever been to. I would highly recommend everybody go there, whether you can go on Venture or if you're going to travel. That's like a new destination that everybody should go to. It's amazing. The people are incredible. They're so welcoming. They want to share their country with you, their culture. They want to welcome you. They're so fun and spunky. So I really enjoyed the people the most. And of course, the city and the whole country is so beautiful. One of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So it was really awesome.
Yeah. I was so impressed because you did some traveling before you came to Lisbon. Yep. As well, and I was impressed with how small your suitcase was.
It's your biggest regret in Europe is if you pack too much. Always pack small.
Yeah, a lot of, like you, a lot of people that do the Lisbon program end up traveling in Europe a bit
Yes.
because everything's so close by. And
Super.
and you mentioned just really loving the people that you met, the Portuguese people you met.
Yeah.
I think part of that was through your project with APAV. What was your experience like with your partner organization?
It was really great. I loved APOV. We worked directly with Carmen, and she's the Secretary General, and she kind of runs APOV. Like she's does a lot for them, and so it was really great to work with her. It was great to work for a nonprofit. I work in a very corporate world, so to work in another completely different sector and see how they run and operate was really interesting. And then also how they communicate cross-culturally, and so it was a really great experience, and Carmen was really wonderful to work with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your specific project and how you were able to help them.
Sure. So APOV, like Anne mentioned, the nonprofit organization, and they inform, protect, and support citizens who have been victims of crime. So they had a need for training for on communication, negotiation, conflict resolution, relationship building, but the cost of training for them to get it for their whole staff would be extremely high. So they wanted to get this training for a select group of their staff, and we were able to provide that for them pro bono. So I worked with another venture with Impact participant, Lindsay, and we got to work with APOB and Carmen in creating workshops. So they were 4-hour-long workshops over communication and negotiation and conflict resolution and relationship building. And we got to present those to them. And there was a lot of time spent in creating that project. And then at the end of our program, we had 2 sessions with 2 separate groups of APOB employees going over those things we were presenting on. And there was a lot of discussion, lots of questions happening. And it was just super interesting to hear their experiences of working with victims and working in Portugal. So it was great for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very cool how APAV had regional managers come from all over the country as well.
Yep, everywhere, yes.
For your workshops. I know that they found them to be so valuable. And like you said, saved a lot of money because they just don't have the resources to be able to hire somebody to do that sort of training.
Yeah, and I was also able to provide some HR consulting to Carmen and another employee just on some specific topics that they could potentially have to consult outside legal, which is very costly for them as well, but just to get a basis of more knowledge on it and how to find a solution for what they were looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned a bit about how you benefited from the experience as well as APAV. Can you talk a little bit more about what you took away professionally and personally?
Yeah, professionally, definitely what I mentioned with learning how to communicate across cultures, getting a little more global experience, and working in another country, working remotely as well was great to know that I could do it if I needed to or wanted to. So that was great as well. Communication skills were definitely improved in working with a nonprofit in another country. I think that was definitely something I wasn't used to. So learning how we best both communicate with each other helped me improve my communication skills for sure. And being more empathetic and open-minded just to how they work, how they operate, the culture there, how that affects their work. Things like that really helped me develop professionally. And then personally, I love traveling, so that was great to know that I could work and travel at the same time, that I was able to keep myself accountable and motivated to get my work done and make sure that I kept up the same level of work. And always going to Europe is always a challenge. It always puts me outside of my comfort zone, no matter how many times I go. I feel like Americans, we live with a lot of conveniences. So going there is always a challenge, and packing very small and getting around is always more difficult. And just like your whole life of conveniences is always flipped over when you go to Europe. So that's one of the favorite things about going there or traveling in general, is just putting me out of my comfort zone and helping me grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about, so you were working 40 hours a week, if not more, which a lot of people in the Venture with Impact program do. Can you just talk about how did you find time to balance that with the work with your partner organization? And then you did a lot of like cultural things in and around the city, and you experienced Lisbon as well. So how did you do all of that?
Yeah, it was an adjustment for sure. I think I would have loved to even had more time after taking a week or two to adjust to working later hours, also making sure I'm staying on top of working with my nonprofit. But I never felt like I missed out on everything. Like you mentioned, I got to do a lot outside of that. On weekends, we really took advantage of the time that we had in getting everything completed that we wanted, or going to see everything that we wanted to see. So definitely don't feel like I missed out on everything. And when I think about it now, I'm sure it was harder in the moment, but now it feels like it was just kind of easy to manage all of that. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I think the only thing I had just a little trouble adjusting to was working later in the evening. But it ended up being totally fine and worked out really well.
Cool. Good. Yeah. Well, thanks again for taking the time and, telling us a little bit more about Lisbon. Yeah. So, yeah. And just really quickly, so we'll have 2 more programs this year, 1-month programs in Lisbon. One of them's coming up this upcoming June, and then the other is this upcoming September. So yeah, thanks again, Bree, for being with us today.
Yeah, and everybody should sign up to go to Lisbon for June or September.
Thank you.
You won't regret it.
Thanks for the shout out.
Yes, thanks, Anne.
Yeah, stay warm. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.